not a regular, well, it is kind of
Yeah, it is.
it's
Well-
a regularly scheduled meeting of the Waterville City Council. Hi, Bruce. Hi. Yeah.
2 minutes early, right?
If anybody would like an agenda, they are on the table up here to the side. Looking around, we don't have a flag in here, but I would still love to say the pledge. I can't imagine not starting to be this way. And I think it would be very fitting if Scott McAdoo would lead us in the pledge tonight.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And first on the agenda is the Spirit of America Award. And the Spirit of America Award is an award that comes from the council, and our council chair is going to handle this.
Trying to remember the first event Scott and I worked on together was probably the parade, right? 4 years ago. And it showed you Scott's dedication because I no longer have anything to do with the parade and Scott's still working on it. Whereas Scott McAdoo has devoted many hours of his time to assist a number of different community organizations, and whereas he has been a very important member of the South End Neighborhood Association for 17 years and has been a volunteer extraordinaire on so many different projects, and whereas Scott has been on the board of the Kennebec-Messalonskee Trails organization for the past 2 years and has recently been named board president, he is known for always being present and always willing to help. And whereas Scott has been an active volunteer for the Parade of Lights in Cringleville for over 10 years, other community festivals he has volunteered to help with include the regional 4th of July celebration for the past 19 years, and the Harvest Fest when it occurred for approximately 15 years. And whereas Scott has also served on the board of directors of Waterville Community Land Trust and a member of the building committee, in that role, Scott provides valuable insight to help guide their work. In addition, whenever there is a task to be done, regardless of how difficult it is, they can depend on Scott to volunteer. They are grateful that despite his many civic commitments, Scott has remained involved with the Land Trust. Now, therefore, we, the Waterville City Council, hereby recognize and endorse Scott McAdoo as the 2020 Spirit of America Volunteer of the Year and call upon our fellow residents to pay tribute to Scott's selfless service to the citizens of Waterville. In witness whereof, I do hereby set my hand and seal this 4th day of March 2020.
I'll get the hug first. This will just be a handshake, but thank you very much.
It's coronavirus. Next on our agenda, we have the approval of the consent agenda. Could I get a motion for the approval of the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Did you really disclose your conflict of interest?
No.
Oh, I didn't. Does anybody have a conflict of interest with any of the votes they'll take tonight?
Thank you.
That'll be a no.
Okay.
Unfinished business, ordinance 23, 2020.
Move to read by title only.
Second.
All in favor?
An ordinance providing for amendment to the zoning ordinance.
Move to adopt.
Second.
I have some concerns about this one because we had sent it back to the planning board, and I was hoping to get actually insight into their thinking when it came back, and I didn't. I just got another vote.
We got some insight.
Okay.
The way that the ordinance was written was surrounding the landfill solar farm. And in Kathy Weeks, I believe you're back there. Correct me if I'm wrong. The land that the landfill is sitting on was rural residential. So that's why they crafted it that way.
So I think that goes to a point that actually Councilor Thomas has been talking about for a long time. The fact that our landfill was zoned residential shows that we are a little woefully behind in a comprehensive review of our city's zoning. Because to me, the way I look at it is at some point, city planners had a comprehensive review, and they said they clearly looked at a large swath of land and said, we feel like the highest and best use for this is residential, the rural residential. And I keep getting told by employers, developers, economic development folks that the only way Waterville grows and continues to thrive is that we have new housing stock and that we continue to grow and build new houses, and there's very little land to do that here in the city. It seems like if you're going to have a 100-acre solar farm, you should have to go through the planning process. And I think it should actually happen as a part of a larger comprehensive review where we look at all of the zoning and say, does this make sense? Does this make sense? Not just one spot at a time, because we're changing a lot of things, it seems like. What doesn't make sense to me is that we say that the best use is still residential, but we kind of backdoor a use and say, well, we're going to allow a 100-acre solar farm in residential land. My concerns are a couple. One, is somebody going to have the money? Who's going to have the money? Are we going to require that funds be set aside in a reserve to remove those solar panels 20 years from now when they're no longer in use? If not, is there any concern about that use creating any kind of brownfield for the future, or leaving behind any kind of toxic residue that would make that land unusable for residential in the future? And I worry about the surrounding landowners who own rural residential and what that would do to their land values and whether they've been consulted or not. So I do not like, to be honest, if it were to go through as it is, and I say this in the least threatening way as possible, but I want to be honest, I would veto this because I don't like the way that it kind of backdoors a zoning issue by just saying you can allow a solar farm in a residential area rather than say, should we rezone this to an industrial use here? Yes.
I'd like to put forward, I've put forward an amendment to this that we strike all rural residential consideration from this ordinance, and I'll talk to why during discussion.
Is there a second on that motion?
Second.
Okay.
So I visited some rural residential. As we know, Ward 5 has quite a bit of it on the second half, the lower second half of it. And just as I suspected, the constituents out there are, no, we don't want solar farms sitting in our back lawn, back properties. The diminishment of the property value is a concern of theirs, along with the heavy metals and things like that the mayor brought up. I've talked to numerous people about the 20-year mark. When these panels go bad, what do we do with them? And nobody can tell me how they're going to dispose of those in a proper manner. And the waterfront is a prime example of that we should be learning from, where we've got a brownfield situation, and we need to, now we've got to fix that in order to develop that. So I don't want to do any more harm than we already have, but the residents I've spoke with out on the Rod Road are they're against this.
Go ahead.
Well, frankly, zoning it as rural, letting solar panels, solar farms in rural residential still requires it to go through the planning process. As far as brownfield speculation of what might happen 20 to 30 years from now, that's a concern that will be addressed, I presume, by the solar panel industry, because otherwise they're going to go out of business. As far as zoning, I think you're looking at it from residential properties. Mm-hmm. But what about the farmer who owns his land, that he can make money on it by having solar panels and still continued ahead. So here's somebody that you're telling he can't use his property for a dual purpose and make twice as much money. I think that's a restriction that we probably, if we're going to do a general review of zoning, well, that's just something we probably should look at. But
We should probably look at agricultural zoning, in fact, if that's going to be the case.
yes. So let's think about doing a review of all of the zoning in town. I'm not sure when the last review was. Do you know, Mike?
The last review of this map?
No, yeah.
Yeah, like a real comprehensive review.
No, long time. I don't remember.
So before you.
Yes, before me.
Yeah. So certainly we keep running into issues. Seems like every time you turn around, every meeting we come to, there's somebody asking for some change in the zoning. So maybe we should look at the way Waterville is zoned and bring us into the 21st century.
I agree. I think that would be a great thing to do.
And I just want to make sure I understand what your motion is. Is your motion to get rid of all of this?
No, I want to strike all rural residential wording from the ordinance.
Well, that would
So
get,
No, so you want to strike solar farm. He wants to not allow solar farms in rural residential.
Right.
well, they're not allowed now. So the change
So
would,
you would just vote no on it.
So you would
the
just kill
change
this.
would be to allow, the issue before you is whether you want to change the zoning to allow it. If you vote, no, we don't want to change the zoning, then it's not allowed. Solar is not allowed.
Or you table it indefinitely.
But
I just would like to just say one more thing.
Are solar farms currently allowed in the airport industrial zone? I thought that was the issue, was that there is no language in our zoning at all about solar farms.
Correct. There's nothing in our ordinance that says solar farms are permitted here. The argument that Ann, our city planner, makes is that a solar farm could be considered an industrial type use, and therefore it could go in the industrial zones. These are the heavy gray you see here, and one up at Head of Falls, because it's the railroad and what used to be at Head of Falls.
Yeah.
And then another industrial up on Upper Main Street, near the I-95, not the Armory Road,
Yeah.
that area. So those are the only three industrial places where solar farms could go, but really, I don't think there's any room in any of those three zones for a farm, solar type farm. So really, the only place left is RR.
In which case, potentially, in a comprehensive review, they might say, well, we think that this carve-out here would be used, better used, or a highest and best use would be industrial. But the sense it makes to say a solar farm is a use in a residential zone would be like me saying, well, Nick Isgrove's house is technically in-town residential, but we want to allow him to put a gas station there.
And we're just gonna allow that in all.
In all resident, right. We're going to put all RA, we're going to allow that. RB.
I guess that's my question, is why aren't we just rezoning this particular parcel where they want to put a solar farm to industrial?
I don't think there is a hard and fast site picked out yet.
But that's what I'm saying is, so if they pick a site, then we can consider rezoning it to industrial, rather than just blanket saying we're gonna now allow this in everything that's currently rural
And
residential.
Of course,
if you read about it, there are some serious environmental issues to consider that I don't think we've comprehensively gone through enough. And I don't know that the planning board did either, and I'm not accusing them of not doing their job. I just think that this is a complex issue, and there's a lot of things coming at them right now. But those are the things that if we step back and take the time to say, no, we're going to wait, we're going to have a comprehensive view of the zoning, and we get everybody together, that you have more time for a much larger scale discussions on these things.
let me say, what I passed out is the copy from the zoning ordinance about what it is to be a rural residential district. That's the purpose statement of a rural residential district. And I think the last sentence is probably the most important. It says the RR zone also serves as a holding operation for future development and rezoning. So I think when they created this zoning map, they knew that this was largely undeveloped. We don't really know what's going to happen here, what's best to happen here, but we're going to create it as a holding area. So this is important because this is the definition of the RR.
But I would read that to say that if you want to put a use there, you have to zone it that way, not just say this is allowed now and all.
And again, I've just spent 5 years being told that the one thing the city needs the most is new housing.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of empty residential area, and I think that needs to be part of the conversation.
It's a big area.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
And to the point of this, the way this is written, is we're including both rural residential and airport industrial zones. Okay? If I say no to, if I choose no, if I say a no vote to this,
Right.
I'm also eliminating the possibility of airport industrial.
No, I think that
That says right here, standards allow solar farms in both rural residential and airport industrial zones.
It does say that.
So if I say no, okay, I eliminate airport industrial as well.
I'm sorry.
So, and that's fine. I'm just, I want to make sure that we're all on the same page.
That's
and
not-
Patty's shaking her head no.
No, the only items that are changing in the proposed ordinance are underlined. So section 5.5.2G adds solar farms, and section 5.14.2.f also adds solar farms. We're not changing,
Do they have copies of that?
yeah, they do.
Okay.
So the airport industrial area is still included in that.
Or you
It's
could,
already included in that.
you could make an amendment to just take out airport industrial from the ordinance itself.
Yeah,
And
you
just
could,
leave it rural residential.
Did you find what I was pointing to?
Yeah, looks like they have it.
You still can amend it.
So those are the amendments that are being added, those two sections. If you vote this down, then those two sections don't get included and the ordinance stays as is.
Yeah, I mean, I would,
Right, but I think he's correct. I think this is saying, what this is saying is that now we're adding solar farms as an acceptable use in rural residential, and we're adding it as an acceptable use in an airport industrial.
Right.
Because right now, that doesn't exist. So what he's saying is he wants to
Strike it out of,
strike it out of rural residential.
so he wants to strike out 5.5.2.g.
Right, and leave 5.14.
Right, okay.
right,
Yeah.
That was his amendment.
And that's what this was saying.
right. And Councilor Frankie, to your point, the same, and don't get me wrong what I'm about to say, but the same landowner that is thinking about going to solar can also, to the mayor's point, parcel that out to bring in that housing that Waterville needs. There are many different things that you can use their land for. All I'm saying is rural residential shouldn't be a rubber stamp. If it's got to go to rezoning, okay, to get from rural residential to commercial, which a solar farm is, okay, industrial, okay, should go through a rezoning planning board, okay, and then come back to us for that approval.
Correct.
I'm not saying that I'm not, and to the mayor's point of what we're going to do to these areas as far as the environmental impact, I agree that we should, if we are in a perfect world, we should table this and get our rezoning, get our zoning study done, get a comprehensive look at how these solar panels are taken care of at the end of life.
there's no emergency here.
What I'm trying, at the end of the day, I don't want to have another waterfront brownfield that we've created. We should learn from our past mistakes, decades ago. But
Yeah.
for right now, as I stand, my amendment stands.
And I say this very respectfully. I think saying that we're going to count on any kind of industry to figure out their environmental impacts later has not panned out over American history. Business, sadly, hasn't just worked that way. And I think we really need to figure it out before we hit the go button.
Well, that's true enough. Let me ask a question, Mike. Is there any thing that you, on the horizon in terms of residential development or solar farm investment in any of the rural residential zones?
Here, yes. Well, Ann has talked with someone about a solar development somewhere in here. I can't tell you exactly where. They've never come forward with it, but she told me that she had some interest from here. How real it is, I don't know. We certainly have, we have 5 proposals already, because the solar committee went out for bids to build a solar facility right here in the airport, on the airport land. So if, possibly if you vote this down or table it, that solar thing can't happen up here.
Not if you just strike rural residential.
That's
residential, yeah.
That's what the motion.
That's airport industrial up there, correct?
Yeah.
That, I'm not touching, I don't want to touch that.
Yeah.
I just want to strike rural residential from this.
Okay.
That's all.
So if we leave industrial, that doesn't affect what the solar committee's working on. And it's possible that if somebody came up with something on some of the big land lot, the big spaces out there by the expressway, which are not going to be residential probably anyway, we could always get a rezone to industrial for something like that.
Right, which is really where I think the conversation should be, is at, should we rezone it and cook it into a proper zone?
The only other, sorry.
I'm also in favor of the comprehensive review of the zoning, as we've discussed on the council before, on many agendas and in many discussions. So it has to happen sooner rather than later, because again, we're running into barriers all the time. I do feel like striking rural residential out and still, keeping industrial airport. Being on part of the solar committee and things, I do think that the solar project is a very valuable project, because with the solar committee, we are interested in bringing solar power, solar energy to the municipal buildings that would help reduce energy costs. And it's a very comprehensive plan, and we do have some interest from developers that are looking to partake in that with the city of Waterville. I think it's an investment in a coming asset that can really be valuable to the city. At the same time, rural residential, the biggest stock that we can invest in the city of Waterville is housing stock, precious land, where Waterville is only, Waterville is listed as the 5th smallest city in the state of Maine, and we only have 13.5 square miles of radius land. Every piece of land that we have in the city of Waterville is very valuable to obtaining property taxes. And that we have to be mindful of that. We have to be mindful of the demographics and the perceptions from residents that live in open spaces in places like Ward 5, which is very apparent. Going out on your deck for a cup of coffee and seeing a huge solar panel farm that's not too far off in the distant horizon, and valuations of land nearby. So I think this is a good amendment. I think it's a good compromise. I think it ideally allows for continued investment and interest in not only solar, but also protects rural residential valuations as well.
I have one more thought. Mike, if the amendment passes and we strike rural residential, does that do anything to the solar farm that's proposed or going forward for the landfill?
No.
That will still be intact and good to go. Okay.
Is there any commentary from the public on this amendment?
Like, as a planning board member, just so you know, we didn't expect that anything would just go anywhere. That projects would still come back to us. So, just want to make sure that's clarified.
No, sure. To me, it's a process issue. It's not a mark against you.
No.
I'm just want to make sure that's clear. That it wasn't like people could just all of a sudden put panels next door to somebody's house. All projects would come back, be considered by the planning board. So that's why it was moved forward. Secondly, though, on the we keep hearing about, we need a, you know, review, but who's gonna make that happen? I mean, it's up to your council to do that. And we've heard it for a couple of years, we can't start doing business in the meantime. So,
Yeah, but
you guys have to make it happen if you want to, and that's gonna take a long time.
It's a massive project.
it is, but a huge solar farm also, there's no really emergency for the city.
No, but we've
I know.
heard the other issue that you brought
Yes.
up about.
Oh, totally.
About a review, we hear that every time we make a change at the planning board. And, you know, we have to keep, you know, doing our work, and businesses wanna come here, and projects, you know, wanna move forward, so we have to deal with it. So when you're ready to form a committee, I think, do it. And,
Fair enough.
you think the charter committee's got work with you?
Yes.
I just wanted to add what Councilor Foss said. Mr. Dupre and I are on the planning board, and those were all of the reasons why we voted against that evening. We do have a concern about keeping it, the residents, which I have spoken with, their concern about keeping those farms away from them, and also, Mayor, what you said, we were both concerned about the environmental issues. So, thank you for bringing that up, Councilor Foss.
Are we ready for a vote on that
Yes,
amendment?
yes.
All right, all in favor of the amendment to strike rural residential? All opposed?
I will move the order as amended.
I'll second it.
Is there any further discussion? Roll call, Sam?
Counselor Morris?
Yes.
Counselor Smith?
Yes.
Counselor Mayu?
Yes.
Counselor Foss?
Yes.
Counselor Frankie?
Yes.
Counselor Thomas?
Yes.
That vote is 6 in favor and 0 opposed. Thank you.
Next on the agenda is Order 43, 2020.
Move to read by title only.
Second.
All in favor?
An order providing for replacement police vehicle.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Discussion? From the public. Take a roll call.
Counselor Morris?
Yes.
Counselor Smith?
Yes.
Counselor Mayu?
Yes.
Counselor Foss?
Yes.
Counselor Frankie?
Yes.
Counselor Thomas?
Yes.
The vote is 6 in favor and 0 opposed.
Next, Order 44, 2020.
Move to read by title only.
Second.
All in favor?
An order providing for approval of municipal state agreement Trafton Road.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Any discussion? Public commentary. Roll call, please.
Counselor Morris?
Yes.
Counselor Smith?
Yes.
Counselor Mayu?
Yes.
Counselor Foss?
Yes.
Counselor Frankie?
Yes.
Counselor Thomas?
Yes.
Vote is 6 in favor and 0 opposed.
Moving on to new business, we have Resolution 47, 2020.
Move to read by title only.
Second.
All in favor?
A resolution providing for authorizing renewal of liquor licenses to expire between April 1st, 2020 and June 30th, 2020.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Is there any discussion?
How come Pizza Degree's on here? Aren't they closed? Why are we giving them a license?
That is a good question.
Which place?
Pizza Degree.
Pizza Degree?
They're closed.
Okay. We'll get
Just
you liquor
open
there
for
then.
drinking, or?
Bring your own
It's in the parking lot.
I didn't know this.
They're also listed on Twitter.
I didn't realize there was a liquor license at the House of Pizza.
When they did the renovation, they said.
Oh, yep. Okay. All in favor? Resolution 48, 2020.
Move to read by title only.
Second.
All in favor?
A resolution providing for issuance of a poll permit to Northern New England Telephone Operations LLC and Central Maine Power Company at the intersection of Main Street, Route 104, and High Street.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Do you want to bring up your question now, because it was a good one?
Yeah, because I asked the mayor and asked Chairman Thomas, these are poll permits. I've never seen, in the couple of years I've been coming to council, now sit on the council, I've never seen any poll permit turned down, and historically these are not turned down. I don't see a reason why we couldn't add these to the consent agenda and move it forward and take up less space.
Unless there's an objection from the neighbors or the city engineer or some reason, we've never even discussed that.
No.
Like, so.
No, it's like, oh, CMP's putting in a pole. And most of them are replacements because the poles are falling down a little bit.
Yes.
If you look at them.
That's a very, we appreciate that suggestion, because there's no point in having it have a place
Do
here.
you need some movement from the council to make that move?
No,
It's right here.
Okay. After what I saw yesterday, good to go. You still got it.
good,
So-
thank you.
So for tonight, we do need to vote on it. It's
Right.
on the agenda. All in favor?
Let the minutes show that for the future.
Resolution 49, 2020.
Move to read by title only.
Second.
All in favor?
A resolution providing for a pavement rehabilitation contract.
Move to adopt.
Discussion.
Mike, can you just talk about the streets? Name the streets that are gonna be worked on.
Yes. I'm gonna have Mark help me, I know he's back there too, but the streets on our agenda for paving this coming summer are, and I know people in there, in the audience will be disappointed, but Carroll Street, section of North Street, Middle Street, Industrial Park Road, Shores Road. Now, some of these are gonna be funded with our annual paving amount in the budget. We appropriate $250,000 a year, so some of that work will be done out of the 250 that you approved last year, right? Because we're one year behind. They approved the money in June, July, and then it gets spent over the next year. So this is spending the rest of that 250 from last year. And some bond money too, right, Mark?
Bond money is in there for Shores Road and Industrial Park
Industrial Park Road.
and North Street. North Street is a municipal partnership.
Oh, that's an MPI. We've talked about MPIs before, how important it is for us. It's gonna come up again with Webb Road, right? Yep. Right, those are the roads. I hope what we can do at budget time with Mark's help is to have Mark and John come in, and they can explain how every year Public Works goes around and assesses every single road. Pavement condition. And then it's rated and it's put on its repair schedule. So I had someone call just yesterday, with Mike Talbot, right? Bowtell Avenue? Come on, it's not on your schedule? No, it's not. It's on the 5-year plan, but it's not this year or next year. And so people at least can understand that if we have a schedule for the future. But seriously, we're not appropriating enough money a year at 250 to handle what we have.
Well, and I think that goes back to the conversation where now that our bond funding has hit this kind of even keel, in the conversation we had earlier this year about now if we can, instead of waiting 10 to 20, 10 years in between bonds and every couple years take out smaller bonds, it not only keeps our expenses more streamlined, but also allows us to fix more roads.
To fix more.
Assuming you're bonding for the right stuff.
Yeah. Which is what people want to see.
Yeah. Haverhill Terrace, it's going to be a rebuild.
Where can the public find the schedule of,
That 5-year schedule?
yes,
Is it on your website, the 5-year paving schedule? Let's put
Not really, because it changes so frequently, people, if they see a schedule online, it may not be accurate.
Well, let's put it up anyway, and
We just put stars
with the
next to it,
note
proposed.
Change.
that it's subject to change based on,
Putting the funding and priorities.
right.
yes, so certainly if you put it up there and everybody in Ward 6 says that their road should be higher on the list, I can come and bother you, right?
Yeah.
I will
Bother Mike.
bother Mike.
It's mostly used as an internal working document that we make our decisions on it. and plan our budgeting and that sort of thing.
But we do make changes every spring when we go out and look at roads, and, oh my God, Bowtel's a lot worse than it was 2 years ago. That's moving up. So, but I think we should post it, Mark.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. So any other discussion on the road we had? Yeah. Yes, sir.
Down by Water Street, where they had that flood before, by Scotty's, it's rough and bumpy. Is there a way to fix that so that it doesn't?
That will be fixed this spring.
Okay, thank you. It's, you know, I try to slow down, but there's people that don't slow down, and I'm afraid that one of these days I'm gonna get hit in the rear end. Because I have a tendency to,
Yeah.
I'll have them
because
check.
we just had a problem here about 3 months ago. I had borrowed $600 to get our shocks fixed.
It's a bad spot. And the one near the library is bad. Is that what you were gonna say? And the one at the end of Park Street where it meets Pleasant Street. That's real bad.
We're gonna take care of all that this spring.
Yeah. It's so hard when there's water.
Any further discussion on the road paving? Nope. All in favor?
Thank you.
Next is Resolution 50-2020.
Move to read by title only.
Second.
All in favor?
A resolution providing for authorization for the Safety Incentive Program.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Oh, okay.
I just have a question, Mike. Is this liable to result in a reduction in the workers' compensation costs for the city?
Yes. Well, there are two programs that result sometimes in savings. One is the safety incentive program. We can get return of our premiums paid if we have a very strong safety record over a period of a few years. We haven't received any reimbursement from that for a couple years, but we did get a big reimbursement on our workers' comp just this past year, and I think I sent the council something that a few months ago. So those two programs, if we have good experience, can return money back. The safety one's an important one for that.
Any other questions or comments? All in favor? Next is Ordinance 51-2020.
Move to read by title only.
All in favor?
An ordinance providing for amendment to zoning.
Move to adopt.
Discussion?
I'll just say something. I've been to, I believe all the planning boards for this. The new owner is right on top of making sure that his surrounding neighbors are happy with what they're about to do to the location, and as far as I can tell, everybody's on board with this, so I see no reason that we couldn't move this forward.
Thank you for that. And I think if anybody, I drive down Park Street, that's how I get downtown. I hook down Pleasant and off Park, and it actually fits perfectly with everything else that's on the street.
Yep.
It really does.
Any other discussion? Question? All in favor? Next is councilor updates, and I'm going to kick it off. I have a mayor update. It's not really on the agenda. I just want to say thanks to Patty and all of your staff yesterday. I know there was a lot of frustrated people. There was voter turnout was much higher. It was very high, and we were at a location that is not our normal location. Patty and her team have spent the last several years working hard to get us to Thomas and get everything set up and get all the kinks worked out, and we got thrown a curveball. And I know you guys were working hard, and thank you. You made it through a very stressful situation. You always do. You're smiling tonight. So thanks to you, and if you could pass on the thanks to everybody else as well.
Thank you. I would just piggyback on that I really have to acknowledge all the staff that work at the polls. It's a grueling job. I don't know why they keep coming back, but they do, thankfully. And certainly, you know, I can't do it by myself. The staff, Sarah and Mary, fantastic. So I'm very thankful, and I would acknowledge that for the most part the voters were very patient. It was a beautiful day, thankfully, and so people, you know, stood in line for a long time, but everyone got a chance to vote. No one was turned away. We voted the last voter at 9:15, which I've never had happen in my career. So yeah, so it was you know, challenging, but we you know, the sun rose this morning, as I knew it would.
Any other counselor updates? All right, we'll move to oh, yes.
There was a shooting down at the south end last week, and there was a very interesting meeting of the south end residents, and I hope that I know the police department's working hard to investigate this, but I'm also thinking that we may want to think about doing some other things as the council for public safety. So I'll be talking to you about this a little bit, Mike, to see if we can't do something. I don't know whether you're going to say anything in the manager report or not. But
I'm sorry, I missed the last part.
I don't know whether you're going to say anything in the manager report or not.
Counselor, I think Eric.
Nick and Mike and myself have scheduled a meeting with the chief of police for Friday morning, and you're welcome to attend 10 o'clock to discuss.
10 o'clock.
Okay, good.
To discuss the needs of the police department moving forward, so that we can get a handle on these incidents that seem to be happening more frequently in the city. And obviously, we don't want to just throw money at the problem. We want to make sure whatever we do is going to be effective. And so we're going to be having start that discussion.
Community policing.
We're going to start that discussion Friday morning with the chief of police, and I will be certainly be staying in touch with the South End Neighborhood Association to let them know what is going on with that. And I'm sure you'll be. I think we're hoping to not necessarily just wait for the next budget discussion. I think we're hoping to think that we can put something in motion ahead of that. Not sure what that is yet, but we're going to be having that discussion Friday morning.
Manager's report?
Community notes.
Oh, community notes, sorry.
Community notes is a time where if anybody has something they would like to speak about, now would be the time to do so if it wasn't on the agenda tonight. We don't really have a podium, so you can stay where you are if you'd like, or come up. And we just ask you to state your name, tell us where you're from, and what you have to say. Mike, you're up.
All right, I have 5 items, and Patty, I promise I'll go quickly. I put before you something regarding mobile home parks and pickup of trash. So it's an item I'd like the council to consider at some point regarding whether the city continues to do that into the future. So that's just an introductory thing to let you know. It'll probably be coming at you, whether it's the next meeting in March or one in April. We start negotiations with the union, fire department union, next week, so I just wanted to let the council know that's coming up, starting next week. Oh, and I guess if the councilor wanted to participate in the union negotiations, obviously, with the city staff, it's worked very well in the past. We've had that, so if someone is interested in doing that, let me know. Very good, thank you. Thank you, okay. A number of committees are meeting over the next couple of weeks. Tomorrow, it's a search committee search for a person to take this position. Head Falls Committee is going to be meeting next week. Hopefully the parking committee in the next 2 weeks. We have a solar committee meeting next Monday. And finally, finance, regarding the budget, upcoming budget. The finance committee is going to meet, hopefully in the next week or two. And so speaking of the budget, I put these 2 schedules in front of you, just so you'd have them again.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, right. All right, so 3 weeks from yesterday was when we start talking with the department heads about their budget, March 24th. Okay, that's the start of it. So we meet every Tuesday, starting
March 24th. We meet every Tuesday night. Most of you have been through the drill before. You were last year too, right, Meg?
Yes.
Yeah. Last thing, I think it's the last thing on my list is, Mark, where are you? That gentleman's retiring in July. He's gonna be sorely, sorely missed. So I just wanted to let the council know, we're advertising for this position in the event that people see it. And this is just one of the many times we'll say thank you, Mark, for your time here.
There are definitely times when he has the worst job in the city, and spring is usually one of those times.
Spring, winter.
And the Packer truck is back on the road tomorrow.
Year round.
That's it, on my end.
Taking a motion to adjourn?
So moved.